Hi, this is Denise from Denise in Wonderland, a magical journey of faith through Christ. Today, we will sink deeper into God's Word and His truth. We have to chase the presence of God, and we can do so through His Word. Let's get started. Genesis chapter 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When he saw them, Jacob said, "This is God's army." He called the name of that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers in front of him to Esau his brother, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. He commanded them, saying, "This is what you shall tell my lord Esau. This is what your servant Jacob says. I have lived as a foreigner with Laban and stayed until now. I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight." The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau. Not only that, but he comes to meet you, and 400 men with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and was distressed. He divided the people who were with him, and the flocks, and the herds, and the camels into 2 companies. And he said, "If Esau comes to the one company and strikes it, then the company which is left will escape." Jacob said, "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Yahweh, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will do you good.' I am not worthy of the least of all the loving kindnesses and of all the truth which you have shown to your servant. For with just my staff I crossed over this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me, and the mothers with the children. You said, 'I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which can't be counted because there are so many.'" He stayed there that night and took from that which he had with him a present for Esau, his brother: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels and their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. He delivered them into the hands of his servants, every herd by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass over before me and put a space between herd and herd." He commanded the foremost, saying, "When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, 'Whose are you? Where are you going? Whose are these before you?' Then you shall say, 'They are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau. Behold, he also is behind us.'" He commanded also the second and the third and all that followed the herd, saying, "This is how you shall speak to Esau when you find him. You shall say, 'Not only that, but behold, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me.'" So the present passed over before him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. He rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 servants and his 11 sons and crossed over the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them over the stream and sent over that which he had. Jacob was left alone and wrestled with a man there until the breaking of the day. When he saw that he didn't prevail against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was strained as he wrestled. The man said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." Jacob said, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." He said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." He said, "Your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have fought with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." He said, "Why is it that you ask what my name is?" He blessed him there. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. Yes, Peniel. For he said, "I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." The sun rose on him as he passed over Peniel, and he limped because of his thigh. Therefore, the children of Israel don't eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the hollow of the thigh, to this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip. All right. So we finally, after all this time, we have Jacob who's now returning to see his brother Esau. Now, remember in the previous chapter, in chapter 31, we had the episode between Jacob and Laban. And so Jacob has finally resolved his issues with Laban. And remember, they decided, they marked an area and they're like, you won't cross over this way, you won't cross this way. The problem is, it's not a problem, but you could see it. But I could understand if Jacob saw it that way, is that now he has to completely move forward. There's no way out now, no escape. He now has to move closer to meeting up with his brother Esau. And if you remember, the last time he saw Esau, remember, he deceived their father, and Esau believed that he stole his birthright. And so Esau had said, he basically swore an oath saying he was going to basically kill his brother. And so if you can imagine, Jacob has had that on his mind now that he's coming back. He's like, oh gosh, what's he going to say? Because remember, their mother, Rebecca, is the one who said, oh, I don't want to lose two sons. So let me send you out. And so just imagine all of that's going in his head. And I want you to think about too, how sometimes we may have just resolved one issue, and then you realize that now you have to fight the next battle. Like there's another battle. And that is the way the Christian life is. You sometimes go from battle to battle. But I will say that God definitely prepares us, because these battles increase intensity as they go on. God does not always give you the biggest battle in the beginning. And so he had this battle now with Laban, who is frankly a distant relative, even though it's his father-in-law. But if you think about it, Esau is a little bit more close to home. So there would be more fear that Jacob would have about that meeting, because he's like, this is my brother, not just any brother, his twin. And they had a huge falling out. So this is got to be like one of the bigger tests for Jacob. But as soon as Jacob starts on this road, this path towards meeting up with his brother, he encounters men, or he encounters what he terms God's army. And in the Bible, it says the angels of God. Now, I'm not sure. I've read both ways, where some commentators said that they believe they were actual angels. And then some commentators just believe that they were very powerful men, very strong men who God, courageous ones who would possibly help him. I lean more towards these are actual angels. But these angels are important, because when he says this is God's army, you have to understand that when we believe that there's an army that you come across that's mobilizing, they're there for a battle. And so I think that these angels meet up with Jacob. This is God's way of saying, I'm the one that sent you here. I've made a way for you, just like he made so many ways for his father and his grandfather. God has already planned for this moment, because God is the one that sent him. And so even though Jacob, he's really on this road of fear, he's victorious in one thing, and now he feels like, gosh, I'm about to go see a man who said that he would kill me. But God is ready. Nothing surprises God. These angels are ready to fight. That's why they're an army. But you have to remember, in Jacob's mind, he's not just fearing for himself. He's now fearing for his wives, his children, and his grandchildren. So this fear's got to be great. So the comfort that God provides has to be equally as great as well. And it definitely should. If God is revealing to Jacob that he is going to provide him divine assistance, this should be enough to help sustain Jacob enough to meet his brother head on and face whatever comes. Because remember, he has no idea what's going to happen. He hasn't spoken to him. And he's really in a vulnerable position, because he's trying to also protect his family. But what ends up happening is Jacob comes up with strategies. He's always doing this. So his first strategy is he sends a servant ahead to basically intercept his brother, see what he's doing, and and just tell him, hey, your brother's coming. He's got cattle, donkeys. He's trying to announce his arrival ahead of time. And this is good because so that way the brother doesn't see this massive amount of people and think he's about to be attacked as well. So he sends his servant there to announce his arrival. But then he gets the news back from the servant where they're like, yeah, we did speak to your brother and he's coming with 400 men. So you can imagine if you're Jacob, the last time you spoke to your brother, he said he was going to kill you. And as soon as your servant said that you were coming with cattle and this, that, and the other, your brother says he's coming and he's coming with 400 men. So he's not coming with, the brother's not coming with cattle. He's coming with men. So in Jacob's mind, he could legitimately assume he's coming to wipe me out. He's coming to kill me. But what I love about Jacob in this portion is that Jacob does not allow, even if he's fearful, he doesn't allow any of it to make him freeze or to try to backtrack or try to find a way to just completely escape and not go the route that God has planned for him. Instead, he comes up with a strategy. So he comes up with another strategy. And in this strategy, he uses what he has. So he uses what God has blessed him with. And think this is a divine principle as well, that a lot of times when there's a battle that you must fight with God's help, of course, because God's actually going to do all the heavy lifting. A lot of times God calls upon us to just only use what we have. He doesn't ask us to do anything special. And the reason why he asks us to just use what we have is because a lot of times what we have is not enough to win the battle. And so God wants us to trust him, and we exercise faith when we just use the little things that we have, believing that God will come in and do all the heavy work and make it and push through on our behalf. So, but he uses what he has, and what he uses is he decides to divide up all the cattle, those donkeys, the flocks, all the things he finally had to fight for that he was blessed to be able to leave with. You notice that now he's ready to relinquish this all if necessary to appease his brother, to maybe get his brother to, calm down and to accept him. And so he tells his messengers, his servants, to take these things and to try to move quickly and meet up with the brother and just let him know, hey, this is for you. These are gifts. And so that is the strategy. And let me see. It says in verse 9, we see Jacob, despite all of that. Well, I actually jumped ahead when I talked about his strategy. But in verse 9, one of the things that Jacob does, which is very great, even though previously at the very beginning of this chapter, he talked about the angels, but here we see him address God himself. And what he does is he repeats back to God what God has already said to him. And he's like, look, you told me to return to this country to my relatives and you would do good. And I know I'm not worthy of any of the blessings that you've given me. He's like, God, do you see what's happening here? Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, for I fear him. So this is part of faith. Even though we have faith, it doesn't mean that we don't have any fear. It's just that we should not operate out of fear. So what he does is he does the great thing when you have fear is he's transparent and he gives that fear to God. He's like, God, listen, this is the fear that I have. God, help me with this fear. Help me with the thing that I'm worried about. And that's what it's about when you have a relationship with God, is that you can come before him and you can talk to him about the things that bother you, that weigh on your heart, the things that make you panic. He is the one who you should be able to talk to. And you can confidently and boldly say, listen, God, Please deliver me from these things, because God does not want us to do things in our own power, because a lot of times we get frustrated or we do it incorrectly and make things worse. He wants us to rely on him. And so we see here in verse 9 how 9 and I think it goes through 12, where he just speaks to God. And shortly after that, he stays a night. And then that's when he gives, like I said, I went ahead of myself. This is when he gives the strategy to his servants to take 200 goats, 20 male goats. And remember, these are probably all those speckled and spotted animals. So all the things that God has given him, he is splitting some of these spoils up so that way he can gift these to his brother. And he's like, and he tells him, hey, every time you come across my brother and he asks you, where are you? Who are you? Where are you going? Who do you serve? He's like, make sure you say that you serve me and that these are presents for you, Lord Esau. And he's behind us, and he wants these servants to keep doing this. So it looks like they said, so he would have a second and a third herd. And so that is the strategy. And it is a sound strategy because, hey, it's a sound strategy, even if he was doing this in his own flesh. But because we know he's got God on his side, see, it doesn't necessarily sometimes matter what strategy you do at times. Now, there are some things we can do that we shouldn't be doing, like, Abraham having a child with Hagar. But there are some times that we can do things where God is just thankful for our faithfulness in trusting him. And so this is a nice thing for him to try because, at the end of the day, either the brother is going to accept it or he's not. But this is, like I said, it's a sound strategy. But anyways, let's move on. And then that night he actually, he's alone. Jacob's alone. And then he wrestles with a man until the breaking of the day. So he doesn't even sleep at all that night. And instead of sleeping, he's wrestling with this man. This man is actually God himself. And it says here in verse 25, it says, when he is in God, saw that he didn't prevail against him, Jacob, God touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was strained as he wrestled. The man said, God said, let me go, for the day breaks. And then Jacob said, I won't let you go unless you bless me. And this is important. When we have these nights where we're just up all night and we're so worried, we're stressed, we're fearful about things, wrestle with God. See, you've got to wrestle with God. And when I say wrestle, you're not fighting him. Do you realize what wrestling is? Wrestling is an interesting concept. It's not punching somebody in the face. Wrestling is holding a lot of times. It's a lot of holds and pinning people down. And so this is Jacob holding on to God. So sometimes when you have those moments where you're wrestling with just your feelings and your fears, don't do that. Turn them over to God. Wrestle with God all night long. Tell God, I am not going to let you go until you bless me. Sometimes that boldness is enough because he is rewarded for this, because in verse 29, the latter part is God says, why is it that you ask what my name is? He blessed them there. And then let's see. Also in verse 27, a little bit earlier, God says, your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have fought with God and with men and have prevailed. And I wanted to make a short note, do a short note about that. Now, when he says prevailed against God and men, God is not saying that Jacob is physically stronger than God, because he's not, because obviously we saw where he just touched Jacob's hip and that caused him problems. That's not what he's saying. When he's referring to him prevailing against God, he is referring to not his physical strength, but his spiritual strength, because and also his faith. Because of his faith, he would not let go of God. He didn't let go of God because he knew that God could get him out of this. So he's like, I'm not letting you go, God. So until I've prayed to you earlier today, and I'm holding on to you until I see a resolution, because I know you can do it, God. I know you can do it. And see, that is what sometimes will make God move for us, so that way we can witness his work here on earth. Remember, Jesus, there were so many times where God would say, your sins are forgiven, or he would say, I loved when Jesus Christ would say, your faith has healed you. And then the person would be healed. See, that is how we that's how we witness miracles. We witness miracles when our faith overwhelms and exceeds the fears that we have. So that's why faith over fear, that phrase that a lot of us use, it is a very important phrase. Our faith has to be stronger than our fear. Doesn't mean the fear's gone, but we've got to let it overwhelm it. Because see, even though Jacob knew he was going to be facing an overwhelming force, he knew that as long as he had God, it didn't matter if his brother brought 2,000 men. God would overwhelm any force that's coming at you. So that's why it is so important that if you want to see the miracles of God in your life, you have to have a faith that is different from the norm. You have to believe that God alone will solve it. And you have to be willing to let God know and to show God that you are waiting on him, and you will not leave. You will not leave his presence. You won't stop talking to him. And sometimes I make a joke. It's like, look, God, I won't stop harassing you about this, because then eventually because God moves from that. It's like a child who you initially said no to, or you just haven't said anything to. But if the child keeps asking you, oh, I just really want it. And they just keep talking about it, like each day. And what do? One day you reward the child for that persistence, provided it was respectful. That persistence, you will give them the thing that they have wanted, their heart's desire a lot of times. And that's with earthly parents. God, in the same way, if it's not even a present necessarily, this is just him trying to be delivered from what could happen. And we see God, he responds to this. See, God can be moved, but we have to adopt the right posture when we deal with God. And so we want to be someone who prevails against men and God, where even God's like, I can't take it. He's like, my son here on earth, my human son, he won't let me go, so I'm going to have to bless him. My human daughter there on earth, she won't let me go, so I have to bless her. So you want to be that person who prevails against God, where you just keep coming to God. You're like, God, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to talk to you every day. So I hope you're ready for this all day, every day. We're going to hang out a lot together. And then God will reward that. That is the only way you will see miracles. That is the only way a lot of times you will see deliverance. And really, that's what's going to comfort us anyways. The world talks about, I'm not making any medical claims, but, people talk about, I remember growing up hearing that how stress and fear is so horrible on your body, your physical form. And so that's why we want to do that less. We want to fear less, and we want to believe more. Because see, the more we believe, the more we have faith, the more that we will see and feel that things will work out well. See, the thing is, the more we fear, the more our whole body just wants to shut down. I don't even think it's necessarily a health thing entirely. I think our body, we are less likely to move. Like it could paralyze your body spiritually and physically in terms of you're not going to go do anything. See, Jacob was willing to try all these different strategies because he believed that God was going to bless his efforts. But see, he was good. Instead of just doing something and hoping and praying, well, I hope it works out. He did things, but then went to God because he knew that none of his tactics were going to work if God didn't bless it and if God didn't get involved. So seek God each and every day. Let him get involved in your life. Don't let him go. And so I'll leave you with that. Just remember, as you go throughout each day, the harder life is for you in a particular moment, just remember the more and the harder you need to hold God and seek his presence, because he will deliver you. You all have a wonderful day. Bye.